Lewis Hamilton walked away from Silverstone with a podium, but one radio call is now raising a question Ferrari can't ignore. On paper, P3 looks like a solid result, but the data tells a completely different story. One pit stop, one strategic decision, and Hamilton's best chance of winning his first home race for Ferrari disappeared. The shocking part? Ferrari may have had the fastest race-winning car at exactly the wrong moment. So what really happened during those crucial laps? Why are fans and analysts calling this Ferrari's biggest strategic mistake of the season? And could Hamilton have beaten everyone if that single pit call had been different? Once you see the timeline, the onboard data, and the strategy comparison, you'll never look at Ferrari's Silverstone race the same way again. Let's rebuild exactly what happened. Hamilton lined up third on the grid, behind pole sitter Kimi Antonelli and teammate Charles Leclerc in second. From the moment the lights went out, Antonelli led, Leclerc chased him hard, and further back Hamilton found himself in a genuine three-way fight for the final podium position against Max Verstappen and George Russell, separated by barely a second for a significant stretch of the race. Then the race started to unravel for everyone except Leclerc. Russell picked up a slow puncture that dropped him out of position entirely. Antonelli hit the curbs at Copse, damaged his front wing, and had to pit twice, a problem that eventually cost him the entire race. Verstappen lost control on one of Silverstone's straights and retired outright. In the middle of all that chaos, Hamilton was still out there, defending and managing his tyres exactly as a driver in podium contention should. Right in the middle of that defensive battle, Ferrari made the call that's now generating so much discussion. Over the radio, Hamilton was told to box. His response wasn't immediate agreement. He told his team his tyres were still good, that he didn't feel the need to come in yet. And then, despite saying that, he came in anyway. That's the exact moment this whole story hinges on. At Silverstone, teams were largely working with a single-stop strategy, meaning track position was incredibly valuable. Once you pit, you lose that position and have to rely on fresher tyres to earn it back. If your tyres genuinely still have life left, and you pit anyway because the model says it's time, you're giving away position for an advantage you might not have needed yet. Now, overlay that onto what was happening around Hamilton in exactly those laps. Antonelli was already in crisis. Verstappen had already retired. Russell was already recovering from his own stop. The podium fight was thinning out in real time. Not because of pace, but because of incidents completely outside Hamilton's control. Every extra lap he could have stayed out on tyres he insisted were fine was a lap where his rivals were dealing with their own separate problems, while Ferrari's actual race-winning pace, the same pace letting Leclerc build his lead at the front, could have been working in Hamilton's favour too. Instead of being spent circulating through the pit lane, this is the core of the regret. Hamilton's own words after the race make clear he believed he had more left in those tyres than the team's model suggested. Whether he was technically right is almost less important than what it reveals about the communication between driver and pit wall in that window. A driver of his experience, someone who has read tyre degradation better than almost anyone on the grid for 2 decades, was telling his engineers in real time that the tyres were fine. And yet, the call was made anyway. Consider what the alternative timeline might have looked like. If Hamilton had stayed out even a handful of laps longer, he'd have been racing through the exact stretch where Antonelli was already compromised, Verstappen was already gone, and Russell was already recovering. Track position during that window was worth more than usual because the competitive order was actively being reshuffled by other people's misfortune. Pitting into that chaos, rather than through it, meant Hamilton rejoined, having to fight back through traffic, rather than simply holding a spot his rivals were vacating around him. Compare that to Leclerc's race. He pitted from the lead, came back out still ahead, and had a clean run to the finish as Antonelli's troubles deepened. No ambiguity, no radio exchange questioning the timing, just clean execution matching what the race needed. That contrast, one Ferrari driver executing decisively and the other publicly second-guessing his own pit call, is exactly why this story has legs. Ferrari didn't make an obviously reckless decision. They just had 2 cars living 2 different experiences of the same race, and only one ended in genuine frustration from the driver. To be fair to Ferrari's strategists, pit wall calls are never made with hindsight. Nobody could know Antonelli's damage would escalate that badly, or that Verstappen would retire, or how much time Russell's puncture would cost. Strategists work with probability models, not certainty about what's about to happen to 5 other cars. Calling Hamilton in when the model said it was time is a defensible, conservative decision. The problem is that conservative decisions, the ones protecting a guaranteed result rather than gambling for a bigger one, are exactly the calls that look painful in hindsight when the guaranteed result turns out smaller than what was actually available. If Hamilton had extended his stint by 3 or 4 laps, he'd have been circulating during the exact window of Antonelli's second stop and shortly after Verstappen's retirement. Track position gained purely by outlasting misfortune rather than pace could easily have been worth a full position. Maybe 2, given how compressed the podium fight was. That doesn't mean Hamilton wins the race. Leclerc's lead by that point was likely too big to catch. But second place, ahead of Russell, was very plausibly on the table. Ferrari's Silverstone weekend gets remembered as a triumph, a win and a podium. Ferrari 1 and 3 on a weekend where the championship leader's title defense took a real hit. All true. But buried inside that success is a quieter story about a driver who believes his own team made a call that cost him a better result, and said so plainly, without drama, right after climbing out of the car. Leclerc's win extends Ferrari's momentum. Hamilton's podium keeps his own strong, recent form intact, but there's a legitimate question buried in there about whether Ferrari's pit wall trusted its driver's read of the tyres enough in that moment, and whether a slightly different call turns a good result into a genuinely great one. Hamilton has shown across his career that his own sense of tyre degradation is usually worth listening to. Silverstone might be the race that reminds Ferrari of that, right when it matters most heading into the second half of this championship fight.